You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
We now wander off the beaten path with an update from the Reefer Reporter.
Hello and welcome to the Reefer Reporters with News Hawk Glenn Prentice and myself, Al Graham. It's March the 17th, 2022, and we are live here from the Legacy420.com news desk, and you'll find us on the Pace Facebook and YouTube pages, and we're podcasted at paceradio.net. Good morning, Glenn. How are you today?
Morning, Al. I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I'm doing fine. Now, for people who don't know who Glenn is our newest host here on the network, and he's going to be joining me here on Thursdays to do the Reefer Reporters.
Happy to be here.
And as Cindy was from the East Coast, Glenn is also from the East Coast, so that keeps that East Coast representation going, doesn't it?
It does.
All right. Well, last night you were on the Pace Radio Show. You got to do an introduction of yourself, let everybody know who you are, got a bit of background on you. And today we're throwing you to the wolves, and we're going to get you started here on the network with the Reefer Reporters. Right now you're on this end of things. You're going to be sort of learning the ropes as you go along.
Yes, I am.
That's right. Hey,
all mistakes are mine.
Oh no, we even people like myself have been doing this for years, still have mistakes. They're going to happen. Just as long as I don't shut you out for the whole show or something. So this is your debut. I think you're going to be, just fine. Hey, we all make mistakes, right?
I guarantee you I will.
Yeah, and so I'll make them as well. All righty. Well, let's get started with our first story of the day, and the headline in it says Canopy Growth fined nearly $500,000 by the CRA for allegedly growing cannabis before license.
Ottawa, Canadian cannabis company Canopy Growth was fined nearly $500,000 in 2020 by the Canada Revenue Agency because it began growing plants in an outdoor farm before receiving its license from the agency, the National Post has learned.
Now, the Ontario-based company is appealing the $434,611 fine to the federal court, arguing that it had complied with all of its obligations required by both Health Canada and the CRA, contrary to the latter's claims.
But one cannabis law expert says it will be an uphill battle for Canopy Growth because there are a number of challenges with their arguments against the tax agency.
Now, according to Trina Fraser, who's a partner at Brazeau Seller Law Firm in Ottawa, she says, if I had to pick which side of the argument to argue on, I would be wanting to be on the federal government side of this one.
In court documents consulted by the National Post, the company says the penalty is tied to the outdoor farm project launched in the summer of 2019.
Yeah, under significant pressure to produce enough cannabis after legalization in 2018, the company set up a corporate subsidiary in early 2019 that applied for a cultivation license from Health Canada for an outdoor farm, according to the appeal.
Yeah, and Health Canada eventually gave them the license in June, which was well into the 2019 outdoor season.
So they started these plants before the license arrived. So the license arrived after the season would have got started. The better, So basically, they would have been starting the crop late.
Yeah,
they would have been starting it late, so they jumped the gun and did it without the license.
Yeah,
interesting. Now, but just over 1 year later, CRA sent Canopy Growth a letter informing them that they were being fined this $434 million because it found the company had begun cultivating cannabis before it received its license from the agency.
The receipt and cultivation of vegetative cannabis plants prior to obtaining cannabis license under the Excise Act is a contravention of the Excise Act, reads an excerpt from the letter sent by CRA and quoted in the court documents.
The amount of the fine was based on 2/3 of CRA's estimated market value of the 2019 crop, meaning that the total value was likely around $650,000.
But in reality, the market value of the crop was nothing because they destroyed it, so there was no crop. You know.
And that's what the company's saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. The company also argued that it never contravened the law because it had received its Health Canada cannabis license and believed that nothing in the Excise Act prevented it from beginning cultivation while waiting for the CRA license.
The letter contained no conditions, no limitations, or restrictions with respect to the production of cannabis product, the company argued.
They went on to say that the alleged offense that the CRA has accused the company of committing is not an offense under the EA.
In the appeal, Canopy Growth also said that sections of the Excise Act only state that a cannabis license is required for legal cultivation, which they argue is referring to the one emitted by Health Canada, not the CRA one.
Now, according to Tina Fraser, she says that they're going to have a hard time establishing that when you see the phrase cannabis license in that section of the Excise Act, that it could possibly mean a cannabis license issued by Health Canada. I think it's clear, but it's up to the court to decide.
Yeah, and in its appeal, Canopy Growth is asking the federal court to either cancel the fine or order the agency to reimburse the money, or diminish the value of the fine if the court considers that the company did commit an illegal act.
Both the CRA and Canopy Growth declined to comment on the case because it's in front of the courts. That's sort of expected. A company spokesperson confirmed that it had paid the fine in full in 2019 to avoid further financial penalties associated with late payment.
And last year, the Marijuana Business Daily revealed that CRA had levied 22 cannabis-related fines worth a total of $1.3 million in 2019 and 2020 through the agents, although the agency refused to name the companies penalized.
Yeah, well, the Canopy Growth fine was the most significant in 2020, but it's not the largest. The largest one was worth $507,000, and that was in 2019. That was to an unnamed firm.
And Marijuana Business Daily also reported last February that Canopy Growth reported $115 million net loss in the last quarter of 2021 as cannabis sales continue to fall in Canada.
Yeah, Fraser says that the CRA has even asked her to remind her cannabis company clients that they need to receive their license under the Excise Act before beginning cultivation.
Yeah, a CRA reached out to me at one point. They said, we are seeing lots of situations where new license holders are commencing production before they get their CRA cannabis license. That is a problem. We will not hesitate to take that very seriously, she said.
So there's two licenses that the businesses actually have to get before they can actually start the cultivation end of things.
Yeah, I would think that Health Canada and the Revenue Agency should be working together on this and issue one license under one number for both of them.
For both of them. Well, it makes things easier. It's obvious, that there's probably some people out there who are confused.
Yeah.
On the way things work. But
and I'm sure there's money involved with these two licenses too, instead of having to pay for one license.
Licensing fee. And in the early days of the MMAR, a lot of patients got thrown in jail because they started to grow before the license arrived.
Yeah.
And then once they got through court, they got a fine.
Yeah.
So here we are again, a company is growing without a license, and they just end up with a fine. There's nobody being charged with anything.
Yeah, it makes no sense to me.
Doesn't make any sense to me, because to sort of continue on that story, it's the next one that's up that we're going to discuss here, and that is the cannabis producer CanTrust emerges from creditor protection, and that's in MJ Biz Daily.
Yeah, and Ontario-based CanTrust Holdings has exited court-supervised proceedings under the Companies Creditor Arrangement Act after key subsidiary completed financing worth 17 million Canadian dollars.
Lots of money. The company said its subsidiary CanTrust Equity completed the financing via investors led by Marshall Fields International. and they are a subsidiary of Kenzel, a Netherlands-based private equity investment company.
Yeah, and Marshall Fields invested 11.2 million to acquire 90% equity interest in CanTrust Equity, and provided the cannabis producer with 5.5 million secure credits facility.
Yeah, the completion of the financing means CanTrust has emerged from the court-supervised proceedings under the company's Creditors Arrangement Act, effective immediately, the company said in a news release.
And they plan to convene a shareholder meeting before the summer. Their plans are to explore alternatives.
Yeah, which include applying to the Ontario Securities Commission for revocation of a failure to file a cease trade order, plus taking steps to obtain a stock exchange listing for the common shares of CanTrust Equity.
This marks the end of a long journey and the beginning of a new one. Exciting era for CanTrust CEO Greg Guyat said in a statement. Today, we take our first step forward, focusing our attention on a bright future that lies ahead with our new partners.
Yeah, now they also, as reported earlier in MJ Biz Daily, that CanTrust is planning to change the name. Before it ran into regulatory issues, CanTrust was one of the largest producers, they say. I don't know if you know the backstory behind CanTrust, Glenn.
No, I don't.
But as we just discussed with Canopy Growth, growing before their license, CanTrust actually had rooms growing without licenses, and they got busted for it.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a whistleblower. One of the employees came out and told everybody what was going on.
Wow.
And oh yeah, they've been. That's what basically they went down. They lost the license to grow and sell and everything, and that's why you see here this company's coming in and paying, ending up with 90% of the shares and the whole bit. Yeah.
Wow.
New name, but that's what they did. They were growing. They actually used some of the rooms for something in promotional videos as well. It was crazy. So, all righty, on to the next story, and this one headline screams: lawyer says high-profile Saskatoon driving fatality will test cannabis impairment laws.
Cannabis driving impairment laws will be tested in a high-profile Saskatoon case. A 28-year-old woman is charged with impaired operation while exceeding the prescribed drug concentration of THC, causing death after a 9-year-old Ballet Maurice was killed crossing 33rd Street West in September 2021.
Yeah, she makes her court appearance in April. Now, as we know, we legalized cannabis back in 2018. And since then, the laws around accessing and enforcing cannabis impairment have evolved, according to veteran Saskatoon defense lawyer Ron Peach.
And he said it's not as straightforward as with liquor. There's a body of data that police can draw on when a person is suspected of alcohol impairment, blood alcohol levels, how they relate to impairment, and machines available to most police that are capable of giving precise readings in the field.
Yeah, that's not the same thing with cannabis. And Page says that assessing cannabis impairment is a 3-step process. The first 2 steps are relatively subjective when compared to alcohol impairment.
And in the case of liquor, an officer can do a roadside sobriety test on a driver suspected of impairment. Should the driver fail, then can be taken to the station for further testing and investigation.
Yeah, now according to the lawyer, he says there's supposed to be an approved screening device that tests for drugs, but in many files we've yet to see one of those being used.
I wonder why they're not using them.
Yeah, they're not very accurate, some people say.
Oh. Pitch said an officer who suspects a driver is impaired by cannabis can bring that person to the station. That's when step 2 kicks in. The suspect is quizzed by a trained drug recognition expert.
Yeah, they're looking at everything with visual examination of injection sites to muscle tone. Now, some people would say, and Glenn, you asked me the same question. What are they looking for in injection sites? Like, people don't inject cannabis.
Yeah.
But the thing is, at that point, the officer knows that or suspects that you're impaired. They don't know what they're impaired by. So by checking your arms and stuff like that, they're looking for needle marks in order to see if maybe you've been doing injection drugs, and there's a possibility you're maybe stoned on heroin instead.
Yep, that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
At the end of that process, the officer concludes that indeed a demand should be made for urine or blood. Then off we go and have the process completed. Then the toxicologist analyzes the blood or the urine.
Now, according to Kelsey Fraser with the police, Saskatoon Police Service, said in an email, this is what happened in this case. Toxicology results determine the level. This was what we have been waiting for some time.
And Pitch said the reality is that there is simply more subjective steps in the cannabis impairment process. When you're dealing with so many different steps in the process, such as a subjective analysis by the officer and the drug recognition expert, as the investigation continues, there's not going to be an easy case for it, said the Crown.
Yeah, there's just too many different ways to look at something.
Yeah.
There's another way to look at this as well, is that the 5 nanograms, which is our legal limit here in Canada, is an arbitrary number. There's nothing that that says that you're impaired. Basically, that blood test is really showing that you have THC metabolites in your system.
Okay,
So
for someone like me, that's a
proving,
regular user, it stays in your system for a long, long time. Now, would I test positive for drunk driving? I guess it is.
Yeah, it'll test positive. So let's say in a week's time you get tested. In a week's time you haven't consumed any cannabis in that week, you'll still show positive. So what it's doing is it's showing that you've consumed cannabis, but obviously you're not impaired. You haven't consumed anything for a week, so it doesn't really show that you're impaired. It just shows that you've consumed it.
I used to have to do drug tests as a truck driver, and I tested positive after 1 month, and I think it was 4 days of not using at all.
And you still tested positive.
I tested positive. I had to go in for counseling.
Oh, wow. There you go. So, it's the legal limit of that 5 nanograms. That's a number that the government grabbed. Maybe it was from from a state when they were doing their investigation on cannabis. But even the police said that. Even lawyers, it's an arbitrary number. So yeah. All right. Well, on to our next story, and this one's got something that's really local. Like, it's not only like it's local to me. It's an hour down the road, but it's local to the network right here, and that is because for immediate release, triumphant reopening of Orono's Kelly's Green Lounge. That's right, Kelly's Green Lounge is reopening.
Orono on March 15th, 2022. Orono's Cannabis Theme Lounge reopens. A spring equinox reopening, says the owner, Reverend Kelly Addison. The grand reopening begins with 4 p.m. Nug Swap and the return of the lounge event that regularly drew a crowd pre-COVID.
Yes, that's right. March the 19th. That's 2 more days. It's Saturday. Saturday afternoon, she's going to have a Nug Swap. Awesome. The Orono residents are familiar with the blonde Diamo, who opened the charming little green shop on the main street in October of 2019. Passionate about the cannabis plant, Addison knew she had to find a place in the newly legal industry, and after realizing that the place she'd want to work didn't exist, decided to create it. Some people told her it would never work. A cannabis-themed lounge in a tiny town like Orono, people wondered, but Kelly was right. Not only did the locals welcome Kelly's Green Lounge, the mayor even stopped by for the opening ceremony, and local farmers brought fruit to welcome them. But Canada celebrities, Canada educators, and Canada connoisseurs from across Canada put the inspiring little lounge on their list of essential places to visit. The new lounge's Canada cred was undeniably when, just months after opening the KGL 420 party made of best of list stateside, with Addison taking her place alongside other legends of the plant. Just so you know, Glenn, the Pace Radio Network was there on the day that the Kelly's Green Lounge officially opened. We covered it live. We did. It's a quaint little small spot there in Orono. It's too bad you're not, a little closer. But if you ever come to Ontario, I'll take you down and introduce you to Kelly and get to meet
Awesome.
them.
Sounds great to me.
All right. Keep going.
COVID, of course, put a hard stop to all the in-person events, and the lounge was shuttered for the better part of the last 2 years. Though Kelly took every opportunity to open, serving her local community in whatever capacity allowed. While pivoting hard, she was determined that the brand she had worked so hard to build would survive, in spite of the challenges brought.
Yeah, reflecting on those challenges and the changes the last 2 years have brought Kelly flashes, the bright smile she's well known for. She used her time well, putting out 2 popular cannabis-themed calendars, becoming a reverend, creating the exciting new Kelly's Green Life web series, and working with Brantford's well-known cannabis wiki on 2 new shows. Kelly is also collaborating with some of the biggest names in the industry on upcoming off-site events. Kelly has also been instrumental in the creation of an important and already impactful new Canadian organization focusing on the intersection between tourism and cannabis in Canada.
And there's new lounge hours are from Wednesday to Sunday, with Tuesdays reserved for Reiki and counseling by appointment. On Sundays, the lounge is a home of Spiritual Sunday, what the Reverend describes as a virtual church service without the dogma, just spirituality. Messages of hope, connection, cannabis messages, cannabis blessings, session in church with guests, metaphysical prayer, guided meditation, wellness and healing tips, education and information.
Yeah, plus a new
treasure trove.
The whole treasure trove, yes, exactly. She's an ordained minister, and she puts on her. She has this service that she does there, so it's good. A special new members lounge, members only, cannabis lounge area has been implemented for community events like nug swaps, spirituality sessions, ceremonies, drum circles, workshops, classes, and classes such as Kelly does one called How to Talk to Your Kids About Cannabis and the Homeostasis Hippie Metaphysical Learning. Now, I don't know, Glenn, have you ever been to a nug swap? You ever heard of a nug swap?
I've never heard of it until I read this story yesterday, I guess it was.
Well, I'll tell you, nug swap, first time I ever saw that was going on at Vapor Central. Matt Murnoff was doing it during his programming that was going on there. And people would show up, and basically you bring in, a gram or 2 grams of cannabis, and you put it on the tables, and the table in front of you, and people, look at each other's nug, and you can turn around and say, hey, I like this nug here. Who owns that? Do you want to trade me with for my nug? And you just basically you're swapping nugs. Now, some I think Kelly also includes things like, if you bring some hash or some oil or some concentrates and stuff like that. If there's somebody there that's wanting to swap for you, then by all means.
I think it's a great idea. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. You get to try different strains, the whole bit. Looks good.
Yeah. Kelly's also a retail store, and they're offering difficult to find and exclusive products. New on the shelves is Legally Blunt and Blonde out of Reno, Nevada. Blissful Alchemy from BC, local artist Frankie Smoke, Lux Cannabis accessories are not to be missed.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, head over to Kelly's Green Lounge in Orono, Ontario, and check out Kelly's Green Lounge. And I know you have a great time. I know I've had a good time whenever I've been there as well. So it's it's like we were talking last night during the radio show, looking for we're talking about the lounges and how important and how good they were. And it's good to see that Kelly has survived his last 2 years and is continuing doing a lot of on-screen stuff and events to keep things going. So it's good to see.
Sounds great to me.
Yeah. All right. On to our next story before we go to, then this will be our last one before we go to break. And this headline says, Georgia lawmakers advance 2 bills to put medical cannabis oil on shelves. Oh, gotta like that.
Yeah. After 7 years of waiting, cannabis oil could finally be in the hands of Georgia's patients if the 2 bills keep progressing and receiving approval from Congress.
Yeah, on Tuesday, House Bill 1425 passed in a 169-5 vote,
Wow.
authorizing the governor to issue initial production licenses for a limited time. The legislation was introduced by Representative Will Werkheiser in February and will now move to the state Senate for voting.
And on Tuesday, Bill 609 passed unanimously. The bill would speed up the timeline for issuing licenses before May 31st. If the bill passes, the state would be required to get low THC cannabis oil from any. Well, how come low? I don't understand that.
Because they probably have a limit.
Yeah.
Probably,
Okay.
yeah, and it could be even hemp related.
And is this what people are going to want to buy?
Well, that's what they're going to find out, right?
Yeah.
You know, if it's not effective because there's next to no THC in it, then people may not buy it.
Yeah, and they're hoping to provide this by August 15th.
Yeah, good. The bills moved forward just ahead of a deadline for the General Assembly to vote and pass bills to the opposite chamber. Wickenheiser says there are about 20,000 patients waiting for them to do something. Yeah, do something.
Yeah,
20,000.
It says 7 years they've been waiting, but people have been waiting for this their whole lives.
Yeah, exactly.
If we do nothing, we're going to be in a bad position. If we do something, it's not great either. But I think we've got to do something and move the process forward, he said during the discussion.
The legislation is aimed to reset the medical cannabis license process to improve transparency and the professionalism of these operations, he continued to say.
Yeah, and in 2015, the state approved a law aiming at providing low THC oil to patients with qualifying conditions. But only 6 companies were approved as producers. The companies weren't selected. The companies that weren't selected challenged the decisions, effectively stalling the patient access to cannabis oil in the state.
Wow, so it's been in court all this time.
Yeah, and it's just companies fighting over their little piece of the pie.
That's right, exactly. If the current bills continue to move through the legislature, a new selection round for 6 cannabis oil producing companies will open, and companies that apply, again, will not pay a related fee.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Some lawmakers, including Representative Alan Powell, have criticized previously passed bills, saying they would only benefit the 6 companies. He filed his own legislation that would grant licenses to all the protesting companies. That sounds good to me. Why wouldn't they do that?
Well, because people like Representative Ed Schetzler said the new legislation could open the door for a recreational market.
Oh, and that's what they're so worried about?
Some people have that worry. But Representative Mecca Gravely says that shouldn't be a concern. Yeah, that was, I've heard that several times over the years. They just want to legalize medical so they can bring the recreational in.
Well, maybe they should look to Canada and see how it's going here. I don't think it's been a bad here. I think it's done really good for our country.
The sky hasn't fallen.
No, exactly.
Well, it's medication time. Time for us to take a break. Glenn and I'll be right back after our joint session. You're watching the Reefer Reporters. We are live here on the Pace Facebook and YouTube pages, or maybe you're listening to the podcast afterwards at paceradio.net. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Growing your own cannabis is easier than you think. Whether you're growing for recreational or medical purposes, BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. From the standard 4-plant recreational systems to the latest cutting-edge hydroponic equipment, BMA can customize your package and do it at discount prices. Visit BMA Hydroponics at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville and ask us for a free estimate. Or call 613-967-9888 and we will give you an estimate over the phone.
The only way to go.
In February of 2022, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and Ted Smith were fined $6.5 million. This for helping 8,500 patients with access to medical cannabis. In our interview with Ted, he spoke to us about how people can donate to help in an upcoming court challenge. And here is part of that interview. From what I've seen lately, I believe that you've got something that you're trying to do as far as fundraising to deal with this next court challenge.
For now, people can write checks directly to Jack Lloyd Law Corporation or send e-transfers to save the VCBC at gmail.com. I guess those are the 2 easiest ways for people to help right now.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
A doctor's job is to relieve your pains. And when it comes to growing cannabis, the biggest pain is trimming. Let Dr. Buck Cannabis Trimming Solutions take the pain away. Whether you're a home grower or a commercial operation, we have the cure. From 4 plants to 400 plant. Garden size doesn't matter. Dr. Buck Cannabis Trimming Solutions comes to you with years of experience and professional discreet service. It's simple. We trim your weed and we do a damn good job. Visit drbuckcts.com to book your trimming.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
At Legacy 420, we believe in being different.
Experience the difference of quality control.
Our labs provide tested formulations for all of our products.
Experience the difference in trust.
Our customers can trust that we are following up-to-date COVID precautions for their safety.
Experience the difference in accessibility.
We're open 7 days a week. Please visit our website, legacy420.com, or contact us for curbside pickup as well as nationwide mail order shipping.
Legacy 420 values overall wellness.
Come and experience the difference of Legacy 420.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net. Hey, we're back from our medication session, and we are live here on our Facebook and YouTube pages with the podcast available at paceradio.net. Just so you know, Glenn, that's audio and video podcast.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we got to make sure that, we continue, even though we went to video, we have to continue to be able to reach our listeners who just listen to us on the radio from around the world. So we don't want them to miss out on the information. That's for sure. Talking about information, on to our next story. Here we go. The headline reads, Beto O'Rourke says Republicans like to get high just as much as Democrats. And I bet you he's 100% right.
Yeah, I think he is. They just hide it better. Earlier this year, advocacy group Americans for Safe Access gave Texas a failing grade for its medical marijuana program, saying it is neither accessible nor practical.
Yeah, Democratic gubernatorial candidate Beto O'Rourke says that if elected governor of Texas, he would pursue legalizing cannabis, and that he anticipates that the Republican majority in the legislature would get on board.
I don't know if that's true or not. I hope it's true, but I don't know.
I don't know. We'll find out maybe someday.
I'll let you in on a secret. Republicans like to get high just as much as Democrats, O'Rourke said, speaking during a South by Southwest panel in Austin on Saturday.
When I'm governor, we're going to legalize cannabis in the state of Texas. It is a substance that is legal in most of the rest of the country, most of the rest of the free world.
And some Republican-led states have already legalized recreational cannabis. Texas is not one of them.
Now, according to Austin American Statesman, O'Rourke's comments may work as an applause line, but they may also undersell the difficulty of winning over the legislature's most conservative members, and the Lone Star State has some serious conservatives. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, for example, has repeatedly threatened to block cannabis reform, and he sets the agenda for the Texas state.
And O'Rourke has long championed efforts to decriminalize and legalize marijuana, including during his tenure as the El Paso County Council. In 2011, he co-authored a book, Dealing Death and Drugs, the Big Business of Dope in the U.S. and Mexico, which argued that ending of the federal prohibition on marijuana would reduce drug-related violence. And I think he's dead right on that one.
That's right, exactly. Well, Texas lawmakers did approve the slight expansion of the state's medical marijuana program during the previous session. The rules remain among the most restrictive in the nation.
Earlier this year, advocacy group Americans for Safe Access gave Texas the failing grade for its program. It was saying it's not accessible or practical. Nevertheless, O'Rourke suggested that Texas may not be immune to the sweeping tide of cannabis legalization.
Yeah, O'Rourke is facing an uphill battle in his quest for governor, though as he challenges the two-term Republican Governor Greg Abbott, whose campaign boasts a massive war chest and has promised a knockout, drag-out fight against O'Rourke. So, there's hopefully, there's a person running for office that's saying, hey, let's legalize cannabis.
Yeah, if he doesn't get in, at least he's bringing it up.
Correct. Exactly. That keeps it in the news, keeps it in the forefront. It doesn't allow it to disappear out of the conversation.
And I think he's right. It's a sweeping tide of legalization. And I believe, maybe not in my lifetime, but I believe in the next, couple decades, it will be legalized in the world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's already on its way to do that, to be worldwide. It's not there yet, but it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. All right. On to our next story here. And this is from Muggleheads. Vermont enacts emergency medical cannabis rules to continue the program.
They enacted emergency rules this week to keep its medical cannabis program running. On Monday, the state's Cannabis Control Board voted in favor of the regulations while discussing social equity measures and guidance around background checks.
The state's medical cannabis law, Chapter 86, under the state's health title, was repealed March the 1st, leaving patients and operators in limbo.
Officials on the board officially adopted Rules 1 and 2 on Monday, which stipulate the licensing and regulation of cannabis operators, as well as Rule 3 on an emergency basis. The latter rule outlines the criteria for patients accessing cannabis for medical use.
Originally, Vermont legalized cannabis for medical purposes back in 2014. Then in 2020, the state legalized adult use cannabis, which mandated the creation of the control board to develop a regulatory scheme. While possession was sanctioned immediately, a full market was slated to come online by October of 2022.
And over that period of time, some of the state's medical cannabis rules have become outdated. A proposed bill introduced in January suggests a number of updates, which include a loosening of qualification criteria for patients with PTSD, increasing the number of plants a registered patient or caregiver can grow, and eliminating the annual renewal fee for patients with a qualifying condition other than chronic pain.
Well, there's a couple of nice rule changes, eh?
Yeah, that would make a big difference to some people.
Sure would. Oh yeah, well you got more plants that you can grow, and that's that's a good part of hearing. The bill also suggests delaying the implementation of a new status to July 1st instead of March 1st. And according to Brattleboro Reformer, the emergency rules go into effect immediately rather than waiting after a typical 15-day wait.
And not all the specific patient rules have been ironed out yet. Applicants may have to pay a fee in accordance with a fee schedule that the board will make readily accessible to the public. Read the document.
Well, I think it's quite the thing when the state has an emergency act to deal with cannabis to make sure that patients still get their cannabis.
Yeah, would you have thought of such a thing happening 10 years ago?
No. It expires and runs out usually, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's good to see that they've enacted this emergency act in order to allow patients to keep the access going.
Slowly but surely, it's changing.
That's right. All right. Well, this next story, it's something that it's something we all are affected in our daily lives, and not only at the grocery store, but also when it comes to the dispensary. And what I'm talking about here is a story in the Fresh Toast that says that will rising gas prices change the price of cannabis or marijuana?
The rising price of gas is unavoidable reality for millions of Canadians, Americans today, and it is already making many rethink daily routines and expenses. With the average price of gas climbing well over $4 a gallon and continuing to climb, it's pretty close to $2 a liter in Canada. Many are worried that gas prices may result in an even bigger economic fallout.
With the recent ban of Russian oil importing is boosting this prospect of higher short-term inflation while threatening economic growth and spending, so on and so forth, and patterns. It is understandable then that many Americans are experiencing unprecedented levels of anxiety. And for those living in a state where cannabis is legal, some cannabis therapy might be an option, but how long will Americans be able to afford it? Gasoline prices are skyrocketing and inflation has not stopped. How will this all affect the price of cannabis moving forward?
First thing it's important to understand is there's a strong connection between gasoline and marijuana cultivation. The answer is occasionally, with marijuana still illegal on a federal level in the states. Marijuana must be grown and sold in the same states, which means that no cross-country trips and gas-guzzling diesel trucks, which is good news for cannabis consumers.
Some cannabis cultivation techniques, however, do use oil and natural gas. According to state, some cultivators are putting in bottled CO2 or they're burning natural gas on site to basically get CO2 into the room, which boosts growth. This technique and others that use unnecessary fossil fuel usage is frowned upon by environmentalists. Oh, and it's certainly not a requirement in order to grow quality cannabis. And I agree there, it's not.
Yep, I agree with that too. I've never used it myself, and I don't need it. So
yeah, same, likewise.
There are several ways growers can use alternative energy sources, but they may not need right away if the price is only motivation. While the cost of many goods are increasing as a ripple effect of rising gas prices and inflation, marijuana prices are lower this year than last year, according to a study by Headset, a cannabis analytics company that tracks sales in California, Colorado, Michigan, Nevada, Oregon, Washington. The average price of flower, vapes, and edibles fell more than 10% between January 21 and January 22.
There are several reasons for this price decrease and many more speculations. Supply and demand is always a factor, as is wholesale pricing, and of course, the competition of the illegal underground cannabis market plays a role. Just because the price of cannabis is low, however, does not mean those in the cannabis industry are not having the same financial difficulties other businesses are having.
Yeah, as the case with many industries, the biggest financial and operational issues facing many cannabis bosses today is staffing, and this problem likely won't get any better with soaring gas prices.
Now, according to one company here, Native Roots, they have 20 retail stores in Colorado. They say that they have labor troubles. The biggest cost increases have come from labor. Where Native Roots increased its wages by 14% on average to keep pace with competitors and retain employers. The supply chain director, Ekman, and other companies said that they are working on ordering smarter to compensate for the increased labor costs, and this might secure prices, but it also means a smaller selection than customers are used to.
It sounds like they're saying there's a labor shortage, but then they're saying they have to pay people more. So I'm not quite sure. I know hundreds of people that would love to have a job growing cannabis.
Yeah.
You know?
I think I'd say that their costs, because costs of labor is more than its fuel costs and stuff for them. But, it's unfortunate that the rising costs of everything, it forces
everybody wants more to pay for that. So
it costs more, so people are looking for more money. It's like a circle thing, right?
Yeah. For now, at least, it looks like the price of cannabis is secure. You may notice some decline in options at your local dispensary, but do not take this as a lack of effort. The sparsity of options may actually be the result of months of effort and forethought by cannabis businesses in order to keep your top selling weed products available in these stressful times.
So there you go. It might just come down to, it just depends. It may not. Farmgate.
I think it eventually it'll cost us more because, even people to get to work have to pay for the gas, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they have to pay the gas to get to work. So those employees are looking for more money.
Yeah.
So, all right. Down to the final two stories of the show. And right now we're going to head over the big pond because over there, politicians across parties propose a 5-year cannabis pilot in Denmark, according to Mugglehead magazine. Glenn, did you already think cannabis was legal in Denmark?
I did. I thought it was legal for years now, and I've been completely wrong.
Yeah, because here we are. We've got a headline just talking about a pilot project on it. So let's find out more.
Earlier this month, the proposal was presented in Danish Parliament, instructing the government to start legislative work that will result in a bill that legalizes cannabis for 5 years.
According to the submitted documentation, the bill will look like one put forth in Copenhagen with sales at state-controlled outlets, and it's legal for citizens to buy, possess, grow, and consume cannabis for personal use.
And the scheme would set up public outlets in municipalities wishing to join the program. Production would be legalized and take place domestically in Denmark.
Yep, retailers would be run by trained staff who are knowledgeable about cannabis, including related risks and treatment options, which is treatment options, Glenn. That's, we don't hear that here because it's against the law here for us to talk about medical benefits.
Yes, I've heard that many times. When there was dispensaries, privately owned dispensaries here in New Brunswick, you could actually go and talk to people that had used the products themselves. And could tell you a little bit about how the products affected them, at least. And now they're not even allowed to tell you that.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Pricing would be set up to meet the expectations of people who use cannabis products and are competitive with the illicit market. Buyers must be at least 18 years of age and be a resident in the country. So does that mean tourists are out?
And all proceeds from any sale of cannabis has to go towards the prevention of treatment and substance abuse issues.
Yeah,
the existing ban on cannabis was not limited, has not limited neither consumption nor sale of cannabis products in Denver since the introduction of a ban 40 years ago, reads the parliamentary document. See, it was banned 40 years ago. I had no idea.
Yeah, and yet, it's sort of it's that thing, trying to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yeah.
It says here that data from 2020 show that 41% of the people under 25 have smoked cannabis. General consumption among 16 to 44-year-olds has doubled since 1994, they say.
And the existing legislation thus criminalizes more and more citizens, and up to half of the population has actively violated. The document says, and I'm assuming Canada was probably the same before.
Same idea. People are ignoring the law. The law is not being enforced. Just get rid of it. Yeah. The officials note programs in Portugal, the U.S., and Canada, stating that there is no evidence indicating that legalization leads to an increase in consumption, particularly among young people.
And they also note that other drug reform efforts in Eurozone countries, including Norway, Sweden, and Luxembourg. Medical cannabis is currently legal in Denmark as part of a 4-year pilot that was kicked off in 2018.
Yeah, so there we go. It's still not legal in Denmark, but it will be eventually. And why only 5 years?
5 years.
Do you will they say after 3 years, geez, this is pretty obvious that this is we shouldn't have to.
I think it's because some of their very conservative politicians are going to try and find some reason to shut it down.
Yeah.
It gives them 5 more years to work on shutting it all down.
Yeah, they could be doing that. It just gets it's crazy. Why 5 years? But maybe it won't. It's more like they're going to review it. Like how we have how they're supposed to review our legalization program here after 3 years, which they're behind on. Maybe that's what they're going to do after 5 years.
Well, let's hope that's what it's for.
Yeah, let's hope so. All right, on to our last story of the day, and that is from the Fresh Toast. Is cannabis or marijuana a depressant? They ask.
Are you looking for answers to the question, is marijuana a depressant? If you've ever felt sleepy or sedated after using cannabis, you might have wondered, is weed a depressant?
This article answers the questions. What is a depressant? Is weed a depressant? And is cannabis a CNS depressant, which is the central nervous system? And we will also discuss whether weed is an upper or downer and why this is such a common question. Myself, I don't know. I've never asked the questions, but
I've never even thought of it as a depressant. It always makes me happy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so read on.
Depressants are drugs that slow down the activity of the brain. The Alcohol and Drug Foundation defines a depressant as a class of drugs that decreases stimulation and arousal. At a basic level, depressants do not directly reduce arousal in the brain. They enhance the activity of a neurotransmitter that reduces arousal in the brain. The neurotransmitter is GABA. In animals, GABA is the primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, and glutamate is primary excitatory. Wow, that's hard to say these. Excitatory neurotransmitter, and their balance controls the brain's overall level of excitation.
Yeah, depressants work by enhancing the activity of the GABA, which has a calming influence on anxiety and acute stress reactions. Depressants can cause a range of effects, from calming you down to making you drowsy and extending progressively to sleep, unconsciousness, coma, surgical anesthesia, and fatal respiratory and cardiovascular depression.
Well, fortunately, cannabis does not lead to fatal respiratory and cardiovascular depression. If you want to know why you can't fatally overdose on weed, there's an article for it. Some common depressants include alcohol, prescription benzodiazepines like Xanax, prescription sleep medication like Ambien, and cannabis.
So they wonder, is cannabis a depressant or an antidepressant? So they say that many people wonder that, but that makes sense given that in some states, doctors can recommend medical cannabis to patients suffering from depression. Additionally, animal studies indicate that cannabinoids like THC can have antidepressant effects. However, cannabis can help you relax or fall asleep. The sedating effects of cannabis suggest it also acts as a depressant. So is cannabis a depressant or an antidepressant?
If you recall, the definition of a depressant is a drug that slows down brain activity, which is why depressants are also called central nervous system depressants, or CNS depressants. The opposite of a depressant is not an antidepressant, but a stimulant or a drug to increase CNS activity.
Yeah, at a basic level, an antidepressant is defined as anything, especially a drug, used to prevent or treat depression. For example, SSRIs and MAOIs are two classes of antidepressants in different mechanisms of action. SSRIs affect serotonin levels by inhibiting the reuptake of serotonin into the synapse, while MAOIs block the breakdown of neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and good luck for me. Good luck on that one.
In the United States, cannabis is a federally illegal and classified as Schedule 1 drug with no medical benefit. As a result, the FDA does not consider cannabis to be a treatment for depression. Please note that we are not advising anyone to replace prescription drugs with cannabis. Anyone who feels that may be suffering from depression should consult their healthcare practitioner to determine the best course of treatment.
So the question, is marijuana a depressant or an antidepressant, is based in the misconception that depressants and antidepressants are opposite. Depressants refer to the effect of a drug on the CNS, not how it affects mood. In fact, many depressants induce euphoria. So is weed a depressant? Let's find out whether marijuana is an upper or a downer.
The answer to the question, is weed a depressant, is yes. Cannabis is a CNS depressant at some doses. Cannabis is a biphasic drug. For an in-depth discussion of this idea, check out Does Weed Help with Stress article. Remember how the levels of GABA and glutamate determine the overall excitation of the brain? Cannabis is known to significantly increase GABA levels. However, cannabis also increases glutamate and dopamine, which means that cannabis is a stimulant as well.
So this is where we were talking about this article yesterday.
Yeah.
So is this sort of like where, we got THC and CBD, and, people want to, how could cannabis, like tobacco, cause cancer, but could the ingredients within the cannabis be defeating the cancer?
That's what I've always been told, and that's the way I tend to believe.
Yeah.
It does both. Like in me personally, it always makes me happier. I've never felt depressed after using cannabis ever.
Yeah. Same here. Exactly. Same here. All right. Let's see. Is it an upper or downer? Evidently, the answer is to the question, is weed an upper or downer, is a bit complicated. Cannabis can be an upper and a downer, they say. This isn't a simple answer, which is why the question persists through the years. Beyond the effects of THC, there are other compounds in cannabis that can sedate you. For example, if you consume a strain with a moderate to high micrine and linolene or terpene content, you may experience calming and sedative like effects. As we discussed in Cannabis Good for Sleep, which is another article that they have, cannabis was historically classified in medical textbooks as a hypnotonic and sedative, two types of drugs that are depressants. In short, they say that cannabis is a depressant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
so there you go.
Yeah, it's both, I believe.
Yeah, I'm looking at it as being, it can be both. Maybe it comes down to the person.
Well, the way they describe it is it slows down brain function. If you're looking to slow down brain function very little, maybe it's an upper for you.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. My brain doesn't seem to slow down. Sometimes I wish it would.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting.
Very interesting article.
Very interesting. Because I know that for I know Treating Yourself magazine, they had a big article on depression and cannabis and how it can help, and that was years ago.
And how did that article end?
Well, they said that there was benefit.
It didn't say.
Obviously, I can't remember the whole article, but
yeah.
So
wow.
Who knows? Well, there you go, Glenn. We got through it.
We
first
did.
Show, did your first debut? We didn't trip over each other or anything.
Well, it worked out good today.
Worked out good, and we got her all done in an hour, not an hour and a half. Like, sometimes, those first times take a little longer until you get to used to it. So that's good. Starting off on the good foot.
I enjoyed myself.
That's good. All right. Other than that, that's our Reefer report for March the 17th, 2022, and from the Legacy420.com news desk. I would like to thank our buds at BMA Hydroponics, Dr. Buck, CTS.com, also Legacy420.com, the Camelford Lifestyle Shop in downtown Camelford. And in closing, we'd like to thank you for listening or watching the show. And if you enjoyed it, please share it to whom you think will benefit from it. A friend, a family member, or maybe the guy down the street. Plus, don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
Deal.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. Visit our hydroponics superstore at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville, and we'll show you how to grow your own quality cannabis for pennies per gram. We're open Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Thursdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Call 613-967-9888. BMA Hydroponics. It's worth the drive.
The only way to go.
At Legacy 420, we believe in being different.
Experience the difference of quality control.
Our labs provide tested formulations for all of our products.
Experience the difference in trust.
Our customers can trust that we are following up-to-date COVID precautions for their safety.
Experience the difference in accessibility.
We're open 7 days a week. Please visit our website, legacy420.com, or contact us for curbside pickup as well as nationwide mail order shipping.
Legacy 420 values overall wellness.
Come and experience the difference of Legacy 420.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
A doctor's job is to relieve your pains. And when it comes to growing cannabis, the biggest pain is trimming. Let Dr. Buck Cannabis Trimming Solutions take the pain away. Whether you're a home grower or a commercial operation, we have the cure. From 4 plants to 400 plant. Garden size doesn't matter. Dr. Buck Cannabis Trimming Solutions comes to you with years of experience and professional discreet service. It's simple. We trim your weed and we do a damn good job. Visit drbuckcts.com to book your trimming.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.